welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and today's video is a video I haven't done in a very long time. It's a tier list video, it's a ranking video, it's ranking every Manchester United player based off their performance this season. The last time I did a tier list video was probably like July, so hit that like button and subscribe down below if you like tier list videos. And if you're new to the channel, I upload pretty much daily Manchester United content, transfer updates, match previews, match reviews. So yeah, subscribe, like, share. Let's get into the tier list video. Obviously this is my opinion. If you don't agree with my opinion, let me know why in the comment section down below and who you change on the tier list. Right, let's get straight into the video, and the rankings are potential player of the year. Good, like they're having a good season, they're playing well, good, great season. Average, like they're okay, like they haven't been particularly bad, they haven't been particularly good, maybe they've had the odd good game, maybe they've had the odd bad game. Poor, they've underperformed, they've not really provided much this season, they've not offered much this season. And sell. Players I think that we need to get rid of, we need to sell. So yeah, let's get into it. We're starting off with a young lad in Brandon Williams. Now, you have to put him in poor. Now, I think it would be too nice to put him in average. He's a young lad. He's not very experienced, but you've got to put him in poor. Like, he hasn't played much. I think he's had like 7 appearances. Like, he's not been particularly bad when he's played, but he's not been good either. He hasn't done enough to actually be given a spot. Tellez, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw ahead of him. I think he's a player that, you know, given some experience, given some game time, like he's Premier League quality. I don't know if it'll ever be Man United quality, but I think he has the potential to be Premier League quality, which I think maybe if he went out on loan to Southampton, that would have been really beneficial to him. But I think I'm going to have to put him in poor, because this time last year he'd played like 20 games by now and was basically pushed Ashley Young out of the team, and he's not really kicked on from then. And we've got Tellez in, and Luke Shaw's so good, Wan-Bissaka's so good, Tellez is a step ahead of him, that he's not really going to get his go. I think we've kept him around as backup to Wan-Bissaka. Again, when he's played, like, he hasn't been particularly awful, but he's just not been good, so I have to put him in poor. The second player being Paul Pogba. Now, this is a tough one because I don't really know where to put Pogba, because if we're talking about before December, you put him in poor, but if we're talking about after December, you put him in good. So that makes me feel like, do I put Pogba in average? But then when I look at some of the other players I'm thinking of putting in average, I feel like Pogba's a step ahead of them. I think the expectations for Pogba are higher, so maybe you do put him in average, but I think Pogba is one of the reasons we got into first place. I think Pogba's offered a lot more than a lot of other players, so I think I have to put Pogba in good, but I would understand why you put him on average, just because, like, he's had 3 or 4 world-class games. He's been pretty good lately, he's been pretty consistent lately, he's done his defensive job. You know, obviously we saw how bad we were without him against West Ham, how boring we were without him, and he's such an important part of the team, so I'm going to put him in good, but I think he really should be in average because he did have a poor start to the season, but I know he had COVID. Mata. Now, Mata's one of my favourite Manchester United players, but I think we should have sold him last season. He's alright in the Luton Town Cup games and all of that, but he's not really provided that much this season. You could put him in poor, but I'm going to put him in sell because he's not played much, and when he has played, he hasn't been particularly good. I've sitting down and I'm like, why don't you just put Van Der Beek on the right? What's Mata doing? He was part of that horrible Istanbul loss. Yes, he was decent versus Luton, but then he was crap versus Watford. I think Mata's a good player. He's good to have in the team, but I don't think he's Man United quality anymore. You know, if Mata was 22, I'd say keep him, give him a bit more time, but Mata's 32, so I would sell Mata. Fred. Now, I'm going to put Fred in good. I don't think he's good enough to be a potential player of the year because, like, restricts us going forward, but he's an engine, he's a key part of the squad. Yes, his passing's a bit off, yes, his touch is bad, yes, he can't shoot to save his life, but he's a workhorse. He runs, he's an engine, he adds a bit of pace to the team, like, he just drives the team, and I think Fred's been good this season. I think he's been one of our more underrated players, so you've got to put Fred in good. Bruno Fernandez, where to put him? Potential player of the season. This guy is insane. This guy is basically the reason we're even near the top. Yes, Man City are probably going to run away with the league, but like since Bruno Fernandez has joined us, we've actually been so good. So he's got to go in world class. Daniel James. Now, again, I like Daniel James, but you've got to put him in poor. Like, he's not. Like, he's had his chances, so I can't put him in average because he's had his chances, he's not really taken it. Yes, he was good against Leeds. Yes, he gets the odd goal here and there. I have to put him in poor. Matic, I'm going to put Matic in poor, but I was tempted to put Matic in sell. But, like, I still think there should be another year in Matic. He was so good at the end of last season. I don't know what's happening with him this season, but he's not been good this season. He's not been getting the team, but I mean, I think sell Matic, get a top CDM, but I'm going to put Matic in poor, which brings me to McTominay. Now, for me, McTominay's having a good season. He's not up there for potential player of the season because he's had some poor games where I'm like, drop McTominay. He restricts us defensively, but he's had some good games. McTominay always does what Ollie tells him to do. He's not a CDM. He does get skipped past. But that's because Ollie tells him to play deep as a CDM. When Ollie tells McTominay to play as a box-to-box midfielder, he's absolutely brilliant. And he's a workhorse. You know that he will never give up. You know that he'll run for the badge, he'll play for the badge. I think after Bruno, he's got the second best captain mentality. If you don't give Bruno captaincy, you give it to McTominay. I think, yeah, he's a good player. He does whatever Ollie tells him to do. He's one of those players, he's never particularly dreadful, but he's been pretty meh this season. He's had a few bad games, he's had a few good games, but I think he's been quite important, you know, to us. So I think I'm going to put him in good. Tony Martial, I love Tony Martial. I'm in the Martial fan club, but he's got to go in poor. He ended last season so well, and he's just been poor this season. You know, he's had the odd good game, but he's not been good enough. Now Rashford. Rashford is a tough one because I think, do I put Rashford in average? Because Rashford's had some world-class games and some stinkers. Rashford's been poor. Probably lately he's not been great, but then he has that game against Liverpool and he turns up and he's very inconsistent. But the reason I'm not putting Rashford in average is because his numbers are so good this season. I think he's got like 15 goals and he's already got more assists this season than he got last season. He's on record to get over 20 goals this season and he doesn't take penalties. And, you know, when Greenwood and Martial are underperforming, but we scored the second most goals in the league, you know Rashford's done his bit. So I'm going to put Rashford in good. David De Gea, I kind of want to put him in good, but I'm going to put him in average because I feel like he has dropped off a little bit lately. I don't blame him for the Everton game. I think that was the defence's fault. He hasn't got that many clean sheets, but again, I think that is the defence's fault. But I'm going to put De Gea in average. I think he was good, but he's just dropped down to average, but you could put him in good average. I don't think he's had a bad season. You know, he started the season really well. You know, Everton maybe wasn't his best game. He's made the odd error, but I think he's been decent. So I'd say like average, but top of average. The next player, again, I think goes in average is Mason Greenwood. The reason I'm not putting him in poor with Martial is because Mason Greenwood's 19 years of age, and I think because he got 17 goals last season, we have such high expectations for him, understandably, because he's a great young player. And, you know, he's not hit the heights of last season, but he's looking better one at the moment. But, you know, he lost a best friend to suicide. There was that England scandal. And I think lately he's looked really good. You know, he didn't get a goal or assist against Everton. He looked good. He didn't get a goal or assist versus West Ham, but he looked good. He's just looking good. Like, he's looking better than Martial. And he's almost looking better than Rashford the last few games. You know, yeah, 1 goal and 1 assist in the Premier League this season isn't great. But I'm putting an average season because he's a young player. It's not his fault. You know, we shouldn't be expecting so much of him at a young age anyway. Now, Donnie Van Der Beek, a player that I could put in poor, and maybe I should put in poor, but I feel sorry for him. So I'm putting him in average, because when he's played in the number 6 role, he's basically been man of the match in like the 4 games he's played in that number 6 role. When he's played in the Bruno role and we've rested Bruno, he's been average. Not good, average. Not bad. I mean, West Ham was probably his worst game, but average. Okay? And that is because he's not playing with Bruno Fernandez. But when Donnie and Bruno play together, he's really good. And I think, you know, with Pogba injured, why don't you try McTominay, Donnie, Bruno, or Fred, Donnie, Bruno? Try it out. Because I think when Donnie plays with Bruno, he's good. So I'm going to put him at average because he hasn't had the minutes. But normally when he's played, he's been good. Now, Alex Telles, I think he's been quite good lately. He hasn't had many opportunities. He's had some poor games. I thought he was actually really good versus West Ham. Thought he was potential man of the match. But I'm going to put him in poor because he's had more opportunities than Donny because of Luke Shaw's injury, because we want to rest Luke Shaw a lot more than we rest Bruno. And defensively, he's had some issues. He wasn't good versus Sheffield United. We'd have to sub him off a few times. But I think, like, his crossing is good, his delivery is good. I thought he was good in his last game. I think Alex Telles is just a player that needs to run a games. Cavani, a player when I thought he was going to come to Manchester United was going to flop. You know what? He's been somewhat of a success. He's pushed Martial out the team. He's scoring goals. His movement, when he gets his head on something, is so good. His work rate, he's a winner. He's a mentality. You've got to put him in good. Like, he's been pretty good since he's joined. And Dean Henderson, decent player. Yeah, made 1 odd mistake, but he's been a pretty good keeper this season. I'm going to put him in decent. He hasn't played enough to be in good, and he hasn't done enough to kick De Gea out the team. Now, Victor Lindelof, people are going to put him in poor. People are going to put him in poor, but we are where we are in the league second, not because of Lindelof, let's be honest, but Lindelof is a decent centre-back. Maguire is a decent centre-back, but together Lindelof and Maguire are a calamity. But I don't think Lindelof is a bad player. I think Lindelof, when he plays with Maguire, is often better than Maguire. Lindelof does more of the work, do you know what I mean? And I'm going to put Lindelof in average, okay? I'm not going to put him in poor because Lindelof's had some good games and he's had some poor games. So in the middle, average. Eric Bailly, now I want to put Eric Bailly in average because he hasn't played enough, but people are going to kill me if I put Eric Bailly on the same level as Lindelof, because when Eric Bailly plays with Maguire goes from a £20 million signing to a £50 million signing. Eric Bailly has that pace at the back. He's been our best centre-back when he's played, but he hasn't played enough. So I'm going to put Eric Bailly in good because he was the reason we got top of the league when we beat Burnley, because he had a few run of games because Lindelof was injured. He upped Maguire's performance. I'll put him in good because when he's played he's been good, but because he hasn't played that much, he could go in average. Phil Jones, sell. Harry Maguire, captain of the club, should he be captain? No. Again, I'm going to put him in average because he's had some really good games and he's had some shockers. For captain of the club, you could put him in poor, but I'll put him in average because he's not a bad player. He's not been as bad as other players. He's just had an average season. Luke Shaw, potential player of the season. He's been world class this season. He's been absolutely brilliant. Tellers can't get a look in. Going forward, Luke Shaw's improved massively. His numbers this season are already better than last season in less games. Defensively solid as always. He's just a big part of the team. Whenever he comes on, he makes an impact. You think for a left back, you wouldn't expect him to change the team that much, make so much of an impact, but he does. So Luke Shaw, world class. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he's been inconsistent. He's had some amazing games, especially the big games. PSG, world class. He's had some games where he's looked a bit out of position, looked a bit poor, played a player on side, but he's mostly been good this season, and lately he's been good, so I'm going to put him in good. And finally, Axel Tuanzebe, again, had some good games, had some bad games, hasn't got a look in, but I've got to put him in poor because he hasn't done enough to impress other than that PSG game. And that's my player rankings for Manchester United this season, where I rank the players based off their performances this season. You're bound to disagree with me, so let me know which ones you disagree on in the comment section down below. Like, subscribe, share if you have not already. Like, subscribe, share. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.